advertising is dead. It's all business now. And a lot of businesses have really had to evolve and change how they function, especially those which were predominantly physical in their ecosystem of functioning as they move to this hybrid form of working that we all work in today. And to understand how the fitness industry, or rather the fitness, nutrition, and health industry has really adapted to this hybrid way of functioning, I have Ketan Mavinkurve on the show today. Ketan is the founder and CEO at Alpha Coach, and so I'll tap into how he's building a company focused on this hybrid space that the fitness industry finds itself in, kind of merging data and analytics on one end with what is, in a sense, the fitness industry on the other. I'm Varun Ketan. Be right back with my chat with Ketan. Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. We're talking to Ketan. I'm happy we're finally doing this, Ketan. We've been talking about doing this, and I am the guilty party here for okay, we're doing this, but I haven't started recording for Advertising is Dead yet, but we're finally doing this, and I'm so happy to be chatting with you today.
No, likewise, man. It was an honor to be out here. I know we've been talking about it for a while, but I think there was lots of travel. There was this, and then I got busy. So I think it's good we're finally doing it.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why I want to kind of get you in is because you've been through a journey in this space, in the entire fitness ecosystem. I'd first want to tap into how you even got into it, because I know you've had almost you've had multiple layers to where you are right now. Has this always been an area of interest? And at which point did it go from an area of interest to becoming an entrepreneurial interest?
Yeah. So basically, I always had this whole thing about being fit, raised in the 80s, right? We had very, very unreal body image, these things that we had. You got Rambo, and you had Arnold, and you had all of these guys, Sylvester, growing up, G.I. Joe. Even our toys had were extra this thing, and always growing up,
extra muscles.
How do you get stuff like that? So, growing up in a very South Indian, general family who eats a lot of rice and a lot of dosa, a lot of South Indian food, I grew up to be one of those sort of skinny, fat, kind of people who never had this thing, was never picked on teams, and always strove to get, how do I get there? And and then I tried a bunch of things. I grew up, obviously did my CA and started working, and each thing sort of layers onto the previous one, and you start thinking, I'll do it later once I've finished studying, once I finish college, etc. And then I tried a lot of things. I said, okay, now I have the time, let me start doing something. And I literally, at the age of 30 is when I really started doing things. And I think I tried about 35 different programs. Like if you look at my desktop and you look at one of these folders that I have on fitness, there are at least 30 or 40 different programs, either that I've paid for or just downloaded free or just tried at some point. But that enthusiasm eventually didn't get me anywhere. Honestly, I tried all of that. And then come 2016, I met a friend, and I decided to actually put this little bit of fire in about about the whole thing about fitness into a business. And I said, let me try doing something with it, so that, and I then became a little bit, I ventured into becoming an entrepreneur at some thing. It was a side hustle. Obviously, it was a gym in Bandra, in Khar Bandra. And that's when just living and breathing amongst those people who were my coaches, how figuring out those things. And we had a lot of models and athletes and sports people who came there, and just understanding from them as to what did it take for them to always get to their goal. Like, a guy going up on stage has an end date, right? It's a deadline. Person who has a movie to shoot, a sport to compete in, those dates are typically fixed. So we try to understand how do they do it in that limited amount of time or whatever. And we just realized that actually just small things that are honestly very not so sexy are the things that actually eventually work, right? It's like bodybuilders, if they published their own workouts, they would just seem like the most dreary, boring things in the world, because they do the same things over and over again. The same with their diets and whatnot. So effectively, that's how I got into it. I took the long road. I tried all the shortcuts, which effectively turned out to be the longest road possible. But in the end, I think I sort of figured out that, it's the small things done consistently over time. But with some guidance in terms of, having somebody to tell you this is what you should do, and somebody to hold you accountable. So that's how the entire thing was sort of conceptualized.
And so when you talk about Alpha Coach itself, right? One of the things which I find interesting is your approach isn't to go after saying, we'll take, because what a lot of people did, build an app out, build a platform out, get coaches, have instructions there, get it onto the app. and in some ways do some live sessions, etc. But what I've actually found interesting is you actually look at it from a data standpoint as well. There is a certain level of tech involved there. There's data that you're taking from the people who've signed up. There's a strong component of that. So how do you look at this whole tech plus human aspect playing into this specific market, especially as this space really evolves and booms in the time right now?
Yeah, so tech is primarily, I could say at best an enabler initially, right? So what happens is that you have a bunch of data, which let me give you an example. Think of your body being transparent, right? If you were to know what mayonnaise did inside of your body, or that huge piece of cake did inside of your body, and you could actually see it sort of messing with your organs, spiking your insulin levels, giving you that, adding to the fat, and actually seeing that journey, I think we'd all be put off and never eat mayonnaise in our life, right? That's the example.
Yeah.
But we can't, unfortunately. So what's the next best thing you can do is to gather data around what happens to your body across various things, whether it's your heart rate, your weight gain, your food log, what sort of macros go inside and what. So an app, therefore, is from an input perspective, initially seems a little daunting. But what happens is that it starts to calculate a lot of this data, which actually tells the coach a lot of things, right? So whether it's their training and the intensity with which they did it, the kind of foods that they eat. And then the coach, what they do is that they actually sit around and just look at it like from a 30,000 feet distance to say, okay, this is what went in, which is your inputs, which is your training, your steps, your average heart rate, your sleep, your foods, all the stuff that you did. And what was the impact or the output of that, which is probably, you lost weight, you did not lose weight, you had a good week or not, etc. Right? And then they actually sit and say, okay, now they marry the two and they say, okay, now this is what you should probably focus on the next week. Right. So that's how we sort of marry that very, very important element of human coaching or old school coaching with new age technology. Right. Yeah. Now we're going one step further in our new application as well. So what we'll do is now there's a bunch of things. I would say 80% of what a coach does in terms of the time spent, or not the value they bring to the table, but the time spent is a lot of the numerical stuff, right? How many hours have they slept? Calories in versus calories out. How much caffeine did they have? What were the steps? So how many calories do we think that the client effectively burned? Now, all of that we're automating, including giving, meaningful nudges, when you eat certain things, meaningful recommendations to say, rather than saying giving you a diet plan tomorrow for eat bajra, roti and dal or whatever, but to actually start giving you better recommendations in the same palette that you would be eating in any case, right? Like a South Indian guy being saying have chole puri will probably not really get excited by it or be able to stick to it. But depending on what they actually eat on a regular basis, you'll start getting that. And it's not even giving you an option like have a yogurt versus having chips, because the taste and texture is completely different, but actually telling you, okay, instead of Lay's chips, maybe you have makhana, right? Instead of that ice cream, maybe have a piece of dark chocolate. Satiety wise is the same, but it is sweet, it is a dessert item, and so on and so forth. Right. So again, we're building more tech on top. So then the coach really becomes a pure accountability partner where they say, listen, there are three things that people struggle with when it comes to fitness that we've sort of narrowed down and identified. One is decision fatigue, which people have a big problem with, where they don't know. We're in an age where there's too much information, right? And rather than saying, okay, we don't know what to do, there's so much that they're struggling with doing this versus that, right?
Yeah. What do you follow?
What do you follow? There's so many freebies on YouTube for that matter. And then you have the lack of consistency because there's nobody holding you sort of accountable on that. So the coach actually brings in that accountability factor to hold you true to your goals and checking up on you every now and then, and therefore thereby making sure that you're consistent in your progress. And those two things itself will just take you a long way.
So if I had to kind of take a step back and say that, at the point when you made that transition from what was in a sense a brick and mortar business, right?
Yes.
Look at a gym, it's a physical space, there's a certain level of investment that goes into that. The way of functioning, that's very different. And you move towards something which is online, tech driven, etc. What were your learnings in that transition as someone who's kind of helping kind of grow and build this? And what did you kind of learn as you started? Because the consumer teaches you so many things, right? The consumer teach you like, okay, these are your preconceived notions about me, but that some of the stuff is not true. So what did you learn during that transition and when you kind of started off?
You mean offline to online?
Yeah, offline to online and from the consumer in general.
Yeah, so here's the thing. Fitness is still very, very nascent in India. right? There are probably 2% people in India that actually go to a gym. There are a few more people who try doing things outside, like walking and some home workouts and some yoga and whatnot, right? But it's still something that people will meme about, will have memes about. Health, on the other hand, slightly different, right? Where people won't actually joke about it. So, but the thing is that yes, there is obviously the last 2 years there's been a huge acceleration towards people actually looking forward to doing it, so they don't get caught on the wrong foot when, say, God forbid, COVID-29 or some other nonsense hits, right? So they're starting to say that, okay, let me start at least managing my health a little bit, such that we're not caught on the wrong foot. We're actually making sure that we're leading a healthy life. We're just sort of making sure that you're just meaningfully trying to do something and sticking to a routine because you just want to be fitter than what you thought. And now it's probably climbed up one notch on the, as I call it, the hierarchy of life's priorities, right? So it's probably down. It was down to 6. It was on 6 or 7. Now it's probably 4 or 5, right? But still, there's a lot to be, to educate people and whatnot. What's also happened over the last 4 or 5 years is lots of apps that have come out. They've taught people about the importance of food logging, the importance of this thing. So that's also helping us sort of, change. Or rather, we don't have to re-educate people or educate people from scratch. When it came to people in the gym, these people came there to train, right? Versus people outside, people at home or people using our application. We are allowing them to train at home, but we're also telling them that other things are important. So just the whole fact that being able to teach them that it's not just I train so I can eat well, or I want to eat less so I can and I don't want to train because I just want to lose weight. There are lots of learnings that have come about on just that, on those couple of factors that actually happen, because you're trying to sit at a distance, literally like how we're sitting and recording this thing right now, versus being there in person and egging you on to sort of train harder, right? So it's very one-dimensional versus two-dimensional. The other thing is that food logging in itself has become sort of, I wouldn't say commonplace or mainstream yet in India. I think globally it's far more this thing, because we've also grown up, right, being told don't count how many chapatis you eat. Right? Even our mother used to tell us don't count how much you eat. But in India, that's the thing. So everything has to be looked at from that lens to see, okay, what is it that we actually grew up with? What are the things that we were told? Mithai after a meal is just a given, right, in household. It's not even like you don't even give thought to it. It's like immediately after eating. Right. Exactly. So those things, so those are things that we need to keep in mind all the time when we're trying to suggest a diet, and just trying to be a little more, I would say, subtle when it comes to changing those behaviors one at a time versus, this thing on the online piece, especially because, that's where you're not really in person. You can't radiate so much of that energy back in as much, but you're sort of doing it a little bit out of distance and through the keyboard, right? And actually just sort of giving that. So that's I would say a lot too. Very, very different between the two models.
Yeah. And I think what's also interesting is that, there was this entire surge towards, okay, I need to figure a way to be fit from home, and not just fit, like be healthier from home as COVID happened. And now you're at a point when things have opened up to a large extent. So people are also kind of getting out. So have you seen almost like a change in how you approach it as things have opened up? Basically saying, okay, when the consumer at that point couldn't leave the house, so they wanted something, basically what I can do at home. But today they might also want to do, let's say, a community activity or kind of get together. So how you seen that change? And from a consumer standpoint, are you seeing the consumer kind of saying, no, I don't want to just do stuff at home? Or is that pretty much par for course even now?
So even back in the day when we first started, and things had sort of slowly opened up. So we don't do only, for example, home workouts. We customize it to each and every individual. So for example, I know I've seen your videos, you train a lot at home, and then I've seen some outdoor stuff. Well, I go to the gym literally every day, right?
So I do a mixture of all things. So
I haven't seen many gym videos of yours for sure, but the thing is that it would be a mix. It would be different for you and different for me, because I have a certain type of thing, my body type, my structure, my diet, my goals, everything's different. So what we do is we don't, it's in fact what we prescribe. The best combination is to do 3 to 4 days of very, very good, I won't say very intense, but good amount of weight training, supplemented with a good amount of movement. Now that could be cardio, that could be dance, that could be whatever, just to make sure that your heart rate is up and you're burning enough calories and you get enough steps through the day and so on and so forth, is the best way to do it. So with the things opening up, it's actually been sort of better, because now people are more open to sort of stepping out and, actually going out to the gym and getting better results because they're going and lifting real weights. Because the thing with real weights is that there are micro increments or improvements that you can make with 1 kg plates and half kg plates. But in a push-up, you can only do a box push-up, an inclined, and whatever, slanting and full push-up, right? So it becomes very difficult for us to sort of coach them on that. And then it's more about us, therefore, not doing, like we don't do like Zoom classes, right? So we build structure for them into the system. So what we specialize in with people who are extremely busy in general, we help build the structures and systems, strategies, and we give them those techniques that build into their calendar so they're able to do it. So, one joke I always make, I live like Subodh from Dil Chahta Hai, because I sort of live by the calendar. And I say, okay, it's time for training. I have a go crazy in the gym sort of a calendar reminder, and I have something to hydrate, and I have something to go eat my food and whatnot. And it's not just the fitness piece, but also, okay, I need to sit and work on a document, or I have this podcast or whatever that is there. But, the thing is that you only have those 12 hours a day, right? I mean, the rest of the 12 hours is you're sleeping, you've got your other stuff, you've got your traveling, you're getting ready. You can't obviously do that. But how do you best manage those 12 hours a day, right? Now, that's where you say, okay, now let me fill out those, that age-old story about filling the rocks and then the pebbles and the sand. And we actually help clients build that into the day so that you filled up your rock, your cardio, your training, your meals, etc. And then we say, okay, now schedule the rest of it around that, obviously during the workday, so that you've already fixed everything up ahead, right? And what it allows you to do is that a lot of people think that, oh my God, he lives by a calendar and everything's set out. But it's just like writing down your to-dos for next day, the previous night. Just having a calendar, allows you to think about more things that you can do in your life. And that structure actually gives you, I would say, more freedom to be able to do a lot more. That's sort of what we help people, build more than this thing. So the gyms definitely help, for sure, to answer your first question. And that sort of allows us to help them to sort of build a better physique in the long run.
As you're talking this one, and I feel this is where the whole space is kind of going, right? And I want to take a broader point of view on the entire ecosystem, is that you would always consider health to be a separate category from fitness, which is weird in hindsight because they're so they're pretty much it's like left hand and right hand, right? In that sense of the word, they need to kind of work function together. But we always looked at the let's say the gym or going running, etc. as one thing. And then you'd have how you eat, how you look at your health, all of that as a separate thing. While you would always talk about it, I don't think we ever saw them as one ecosystem. So when you look at this entire market right now, saying obviously there is a focus on fitness, on your health, on what you eat, on everything else. What do you seeing in today's time? What do you see the big opportunity being, and what are you really tapping into? So this is where we're really digging in, as we focus towards the future, because this is where we find ourselves right now.
Right. So fitness is preventive healthcare, right? I mean, it's something where we are trying to prevent somebody from having to pay huge bills, actually take a toll on their health, actually take a toll on their family, work life, and everything. So fitness is what I would call is preventive healthcare at some level. And what we're building, right now, and actually the opportunity that does lie in there is to allow people to get, as the old saying goes, reward people for prevention rather than penalizing them for a cure, right? So, for example, one big example of that would be insurance, right? If we have any pre-existing condition, if we have a family history or a vice, then we are penalized and we're charged for more premium than the person next to us, right? Even at the same age, everything else. But are we rewarding people who actively take part or take care of the health? Are we rewarding them for being preventive? Are we rewarding them for making sure that they log their foods and therefore eating more mindfully? Are we rewarding them for having a better average lower resting heart rate, right? And so on and so forth and so on and so forth. So that's a big opportunity, I think, that people are now looking towards. A couple of companies are definitely looking at that. We have it in our product roadmap as well, in which we're actually talking about building a very robust system to demonstrate that this person is truly looking forward, looking after their health and truly making sure that they are healthier than the person next to them, and therefore they need to get rewarded in some manner or the other. Now, whether that's insurance premiums, whether that's getting more access to better quality, gyms and spas and, professionals, or whether that's simply just e-commerce and, giving them discounts on whey protein as an example, right? So it's about getting them to, rather incentivizing people to actually stay healthy and do that. So I think that's a massive opportunity going up ahead. Some larger insurance companies globally also looking at this, and we're building a system of calculating something. We call it the daily alpha score. Currently, it's based on 4 or 5 parameters, but as we go along, we're building about 16 more that will come about, which can't obviously be gamed. This thing, some food log related things can surely be gamed, but not everything can be gamed. And it'll be like, think of it as a credit score, which has to remain at a certain level over a 3-month period, and then you start getting the benefits of it. So it'll literally take a guy a lot of time to actually sit and game that stuff. And then if you can maintain that, sort of a fitness score or daily alpha score, then that will allow you to get all of these benefits in the long run. So that's something that we're largely working on to make sure that the ecosystem really benefits from this, right? But if you look at the thing about between fitness and health, I think overall between both of them, the fundamentals remain exactly the same. Now, whether we do something, everything sort of leaves a path or a pattern. And if you it's like how you do something, it's everything, right? Now, if you brush your teeth and that's a habit that you do twice a day, then if we put you on a better habit of, okay, now start flossing as well, you'll start doing that as well, right? The same with fitness, health, anything, right? Everything has to be done in, I would say, a slightly measured fashion. And everything has to be rather than go hard and go home. So all of these eventually play out together into each other, wherein if you mindfully eat well, which is a great, food's like the best supplement, as they say. If you eat well, your health is going to be much better in the future. So it's just like any large project that you start today. So if you were to start working on a book like your book, right, you would have started thinking about it much more in advance than when it actually came through. Right. Similarly, fitness, I would say, are the seeds you sow towards better health in the future, which is why I call it preventive health. But you will only see the benefits of that 2 years or 5 years in the future and not today. So the more you put your head down and work, 5 years later, you'll be thanking your older self. And that's, I think, the large connection between the two.
Now, I have a bunch more questions to ask you, but I know we need to go for a quick break. So we're going to do that and be right back with Advertising is Dead. Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. We're still talking to Ketan. Now, before we went into break, I think what you spoke about in terms of what health can actually do, especially the metric. I find the alpha score piece super interesting, right? Because in many ways, this is something which I think the world has been moving towards, is to say that the way we've calculated how insurance works, how you look at so many of those things around our health, is there a more technology-driven way to kind of look at that data? So it kind of gives you a better scope of where things are. And as you go deeper into that, do you see this almost evolving to saying, till now it's the choice of what you want to do in terms of workout? Like you said, like, I might be someone who might want to go work out from home, or someone who might just want to run, etc. Do you see this also getting fine-tuned to saying, okay, this is almost what you need to do from the form of workout that you need to do? Or is that something which is still flexible? Am I moving it towards too rigid a form?
It depends again. So there is an optimum way to do it, right? And then there's a how I would want to do it in my way, and that is sustainable for me, right? So fitness is not about a 12-week plan or a 40-day challenge or 25-day. Right? None of us get fat in 12 weeks, right? And if you have 20 kgs, 40 kgs to lose, it's going to take its time. And then it's also not the end of the journey there, right? So fitness has to be there to be, okay, fitness according to me is being independent at the age of 90. Fitness is also about going and partying full night, in a full moon party and lasting and seeing the sunrise. Fitness is about playing with our kids, going for that trek. Everything is fitness eventually needs a little bit of that. So the idea is to slowly pile on better habits over time. And the most effective training plan or diet is what you can sort of sustain, right? So we obviously have a best practice that's possible. That's, you've got to follow that. Having said that, if you don't enjoy it, if something that you just find difficult, why don't we try something else, right? So we've had a client who basically just did not want to train. And she had some medical issues and whatnot. And we said, okay, let's just start measuring your food first. And then let's just start getting a few steps into 4,000 steps and 6,000 steps. And then eventually we got her to start training twice a week. And then that medical issue, it's called tinnitus, it just vanished. It was a ringing sound and this thing. And that happened only when she started training. But she didn't want to start training to begin with. And that training would probably she started training in the 5th month of coaching, right? So it's a very, very long game. Our company is also called TLG TechFit because it stands for the long game. And it's actually the way and the ethos with which we sort of coach. Because we honestly believe it's, you can throw out 12-week transformation pictures, but then you end up losing the same 10 kgs over and over and over again. And there's no point of that because you're not getting anywhere, right? It's just spinning your wheels in the mud every single year, perhaps. So that's the way we sort of think about it.
How have you looked at your growth strategy in terms of just like kind of adding more consumers to the platform, marketing, etc.? What have you seen from inception to now that's really worked? And because community also plays a large part in anything which is around fitness, right? So how have you looked at kind of growing that aspect, and also kind of, because your core thing is still personalized, so how does that mix kind of work, especially when you're talking to the consumer and kind of getting them onto the platform?
Yeah, so growth has been measured and has not just been crazy all over the place just to get users, right? So our first app, which is the Elite Human Coaching, which as we call Elite, that one is a pure one-to-one. There's no free download and whatnot. So you can't just go out and get hundreds of thousands of downloads and users and installs. So there we've gone a very, very measured approach. We've gone out, spoken to consumers, got a lot of referrals, got a lot of people who's talking about it. And because we don't throw out too many transformation pictures and stuff like that, it's been slow and measured, to be very honest. And we have about 1,000+ customers right now, all of who pay us a reasonable amount per month, right? So it's slow go ramp up on that side. On the other side, however, we've literally just launched an open beta on the free app. That's got 35,000 downloads already in under a month.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, that's a completely different animal, completely different. They're actually trying to come to terms as to, okay, who are these users who's downloading? Where did they come from? Obviously, we have metrics for all of these, but it's just we're still trying to understand who are the people who are actually using our application. What are they actually enjoying in it? And then we're starting to build around that, right? Not just the next set of functional features, but the next set of community features. As to like getting a little bit of a feed in there, getting again, incentivizing through leaderboards and gamification, rewards, all of that stuff, right? So it will eventually, so people like to, we're social animals, right? People like to do stuff, especially fitness. People love doing this thing. They get competitive. That's why CrossFit is such a hit in general, right? Because everything, it is completely gamified, right? Even if you and I are completely different age groups, fitness levels, I would see your name up there and say, dude, I want to go out and hit that much of a deadlift or whatever.
Exactly, yeah.
So that little thing, that little element of gamification is what gets a lot of people excited. And we're obviously adding that. And we're also adding a bit of a community feature where every person can become, you could say, like an influencer in their own community. When I say that, I mean that, okay, what if you say you like functional fitness as an example, rather than old school bodybuilding. And if somebody asks a question on the feed about that and you answer that, you start rising up in the rank just like Cora, right? So within that, you will start getting recognized through stars or whatever, such that you start becoming a little bit of an authority in that particular niche of yours. And each person can sort of build that, answer questions, ask questions, you exhaust their credits, earn credits for various things. And the more you answer, the more of an authority you have, that much more of an X that you can make on your coins and what, right? So it just helps us make people more engaged and help others as well in the community, rather than just some experts sitting out there and answering questions as coaches. Now others can start helping each other. That's the way we sort of building it up.
The other, being an entrepreneur, is also building the right team, right? Building the team that kind of works with you to kind of build everything out. How has that process been for you? When you're going out to look for people to kind of hire, it's not just the coaches, it's also obviously a lot more hands and legs involved. How has that been for you? And when you go looking out, and because a lot of people who listen to this podcast also are looking at what opportunities might be there for them across for their own careers. So what do you kind of go look for, but also like how has the process of kind of building the team also been for you?
Wow. Okay. So team building, we have a very, very simple, I would say, and very, very, very hard-coded methodology there. We, it's built on the whole Navy SEAL sort of this thing in which they value trust more than skill sets. Skill sets can be moderate to good. It need not be the best in the world, but trust has to be 100%. So we value fit much more than the individual stars, right? So, and this is, I think people in the office are tired of this example of mine, but since hopefully there'll be newer people watching this podcast other than just the guys in my team, is the whole 2014 World Cup, right? Where Argentina had Messi and Germany had a whole team, and they just beat the pulp out of them. And honestly, that's the way we sort of look to bringing people in. They interviewed by 3-4 people amongst not just by managers and CEO or whatever, but also people from within other departments. People actually understand, do they have the same amount of fire, drive, ambition? Will they be a good fit for, even just having a beer after work? Will they be able to help each other out when there's times of crisis? And just now, because this whole funding winter and all this stuff that we are all going through right now, when people are not willing to spend on fitness because everybody's trying to hold on to costs right now. We were also in the midst of raising capital, a bunch of other things ahead. The entire team stood by with us as founders and stuff. And where we were not one day did we feel like, oh my God, how do I talk to these guys? And every all teams call we had, we leveled with them because we knew they'd be mature enough and they wouldn't just say, oh my God, these guys are in trouble. We're going to just head out. But they all stuck around. They all this thing. They all understood, and that's the way I think. In my mind, that's the only way a team was really built. So we borrowed. Obviously, these are not original ideas, but people should read the Netflix culture deck written by Reed Hastings. And honestly, it's had a profound impact on us in terms of how we look at things, how we look at people. They're not just resources, but actual humans that they're not like filling a role, right? You're actually bringing on other people who can meaningfully add to your life and not just that role or the job that they need to be doing. So that's I think in a nutshell how even aspirants should look at how they will contribute to a company in the future.
And what have you learned about yourself as an entrepreneur, right, over this journey? Like if you look at the time from you began to now, there's always a bit of like self-discovery about, okay, 1 second, I've learned this, not just about how I function, but like how I am. What has your learning been about yourself?
I think, honestly, if we all did things that we actually enjoyed, waking up and getting excited about waking up, or getting excited about a Monday, I think we'd be such happier beings, to be honest. I think this work life right now demands, without exaggeration, 10x of the energy and the hard work that I did in my previous job where I was in private equity, also considered high pressure, a lot of work, a lot of this, a lot of high quality work, right? But it doesn't, this doesn't tire me. I go for 12 hours straight. It's just something I feel like I can do for the next 20 years. And it just gets me very excited about it, right? So it's a bit of the passion. It's a bit of the purpose that is trying to help people out. I think I just wish everybody finds that at some point in their life, the way I did. I found it I quit my job at like 42 or something. It was last year and I went full time into this. And a lot of people do find it at 20 and a lot do not ever, right? They just go into their jobs for 40 years and retire. But it's outstanding to find what you truly love and do. Yeah. And when you wake up and you realize, oh my God, today is another good day. And it could be a Sunday, right? And it fires up to say, okay, today is a day I'm going to get this done, rather than just saying, well, you know what, it's my weekend or it's a long weekend or let me just sort of enjoy myself. It actually fires it. When you do stuff that teaches you more about yourself, when you do stuff that actually impacts others, it actually energizes you much more than it tires you out. You will be tired physically at the end of the day, but mentally you never, stress only happens if you don't enjoy what you're doing, right? Or you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. That's another aspect. But generally speaking, if you don't enjoy what you're doing, even if you're doing it diligently, at the end of the day, you just feel spent. With this one, it's actual physical tiredness, but mentally you're charged as always. So that's something that I honestly learned over the last 1 year.
Towards the later part of every episode, I ask my guests a set of questions. They're actually almost like moving away from all that we've spoken about. But for you, I'm interested to see what you kind of respond with. Mm-hmm. What do you spend a lot of time doing outside of work that keeps your interest? What's your favorite thing what do you unplug from work and plug into that you're excited about?
If non-fiction podcasts and videos are considered fun, then I do a lot of that. But yeah, Netflix, honestly, best way for me and that I feel like brain dead viewing, just helps me relax for a weekend, to be very honest.
And since you mentioned anything you listened to or watched recently that you'd recommend?
Oh, the Kunal Shah podcast on the Knowledge. I think the Knowledge Project, was it? I think incredible.
Yeah, I think it was that one.
Those 2 hours were one of the most insightful things I've ever listened to.
Yeah. What can you put together in an instant?
A spreadsheet.
I'm surprised how this answer hasn't come across this often. Hasn't been said that often, because I think most of us spend so much time on spreadsheets that should be one of the first responses. But I haven't heard this one in a while now. And this question's actually been there since episode 1 of the show. What's the best piece of advice you've gotten across your journey?
Advice? Oh God, there's so many of them actually. But I think one of the biggest piece of advice that I've got is the what if, right? So I used to always, honestly, be this person who thought about the what if this doesn't go well? What if that client doesn't this thing? What if my boss doesn't like what I did or whatever? And the best life-changing advice that I got from this really good friend of mine on a mentorship group was turn that what if into a positive, right? What if this is the best conversation of your life? What if this, that you go out and submit your proposal and they give you a standing ovation? You will go in there with so much more confidence and positivity that you will actually go out and crack it, right? And that's exactly what I try and do it every single time. Like, honestly, I haven't done a podcast like this in a while now. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be like, I hope I don't slip up, right? Or say something stupid. And I was like, no, what if this is the best podcast interview ever? So I just came with that mindset and I sort of...
Yeah. No, I think that's fabulous advice, right? I think oftentimes we stop ourselves because of the what ifs, like you said.
Yeah.
It's kind of flipping that around.
It's the weight of the shield that weighs you down more than anything else. Yeah. And there are no arrows coming, right? And 90% of the time, there are no arrows. It's how we overthink and you tell yourself all these things. And you always carry that shield thinking, okay, there's something coming my way. And if you can just let go of that shield for once, you'll be able to attack so much easier, right? So I think that's been the life-changing advice for me.
So the show's called Advertising is Dead, but I want to ask you to kind of close this off saying, what do you see is going to keep this entire space alive going ahead? The entire ecosystem across fitness, health, etc., just kind of the industry within it. What do you think are the key things that are going to keep it alive going ahead?
Okay, not the best advertising professional, but I think honestly, good, meaningful content, educating people about what it really means to be healthy, and just busting so many of those myths out there about eating, about diets, about slimming teas, about all kinds of weird things that people do. Yeah. Honestly, if we can just, as an industry, and I honestly don't think of competitors as competitors. I think they also try to do a good job. They also started from the right, intentions, and eventually commerce and funding and all of those things push us to do more and more and more. But I think if we can, as an industry, give out true information to people who need it and elevate the general health and fitness of the country and eventually the globe, I think it'll be the single most, simple, CAC-free, business bringer for all of these companies and us as well. So we try to do that, to be honest. We try to stay true to our word in everything that we do ourselves in our daily life. And I think if people just practice what they preach, they'll preach the correct things. And therefore, I think overall that will be how this industry grows and sort of helps others as well. Thanks so much for doing this, Ketan. It's been fabulous talking to you. I think we've got a ton of not just insights but understanding of this entire space and how you're looking at this evolving. And also, I think most importantly, how we all look at this from like a one-dimensional lens, but there's so many dimensions to it, like you mentioned, in terms of how you're looking at it. So I'm super excited about what you're building and looking forward to seeing how this evolves. And thank you for coming on Advertising is Dead. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Varun. I think it's been a pleasure. And I like the way you said how it evolves. Our new app is, by the way, called Alpha Coach Evolve. So please go check it out and download it if you're on an Android right now. But the iOS version is coming out in a couple of months as well. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot, Varun. Appreciate it. If you like this podcast and you want to listen to more podcasts like this, head over to the IVM Podcast website or app or wherever you get your podcast from and look at all the podcasts that IVM makes. There's some really fun stuff there.